Hello and welcome. Find a comfortable spot, relax, and let the blend of Reddit stories and peaceful Minecraft ease your mind. Enjoy.
Story 1. My phone keeps getting voice messages from myself. They're recorded while I'm asleep. I was at the bus stop by the time I had a moment to check my phone. I responded to several messages from friends and family, then frowned. There was a message from myself, from my work number to my personal number. Shit. I usually send myself messages as reminders to remember to bring certain stuff to work, to sending email, etc. I wondered what I might have forgotten to pack as I opened the message thread. It was a voice message. I frowned. I don't usually leave voice messages. I popped in my earphones and played it.
Jen, this is me, Jen, but the intact one. They've carved out your memories, suppressed them, wiped them from existence. There's so much you don't remember. You have to remember. Please, just... The recording cut off. I stared at the message in shock. I didn't remember recording that voice message, but it was my voice. Entirely mine. Unmistakably mine. There was something incredibly unsettling about hearing your voice saying words you didn't say. Then, I sucked in a breath of relief. AI. That was probably it. My phone had probably been hacked. A scammer was sending me an AI-constructed voice message. I felt a tingle of unease. The AI voice was so accurate, but at least the mystery was solved. The bus came then, and I put it out of my mind. I would reformat my phone later at night. I reformatted my phone, but the messages kept coming, always with the same ominous messages that I had forgotten a large part of my life, that I had forgotten a whole person, someone important to me, that they had suppressed my memories. They weren't even creative about it. I mean, when a scam isn't working, try something else, right? I took it to a tech guy who couldn't figure it out. I didn't want to buy a new phone, so I just ignored the messages. The annoying thing was that sometimes I ignored my own messages of reminders because of that. I only began to fear when I first lost time. One minute I was in a taxi, staring into space, mind grazing on whatever pointless topics. The next I was at a random building somewhere in the city. At a part of the city I've never been to before. I had no idea how I got there. When did I get out of the taxi? Did I bus? How long had I been standing there? I looked at the building before me. Nothing out of the ordinary. The typical gray, gloomy facade of industrial buildings where dreams go to die. I left. Walking to the nearest bus stop, my knee gave out at one point, but I caught myself before I fell. I sat at the seat and clasped my shaking hands together. What happened? Why did I not remember? The sky was nearly dark. I looked at my phone. I had lost about 4 hours. Hours completely unaccounted for. That's when I saw it. Another voice message. I squashed my rising fear and played it. Jen, you stubborn bitch. Listen to me for fuck's sake. Wake up. This is not a joke, not a prank, not a scam, nothing like that. This is real. Do you not remember him? Dean, how could you forget? I don't care what they did to your brain. You ought to remember him anyway. Your body, your emotions. Isn't there any inkling of who Dean, the love of your life, might have been? I paused the message. Dean. Was I crazy? Was I imagining it? Was I getting swayed by the scammer? Because I thought I felt a tug in my heart upon hearing his name. I thought I saw a ghost of a silhouette in my mind. I shook my head and played the rest of the message. I'm you. I'm the you that has all the memories. Just believe me, for fuck's sake. They suppressed me, but I'm here. I can only reach you, reach my own body, our body, when you're in a semi-unconscious state, like a dream state. Even gaining control of your body in that state took me months, and you just kept waking up after a short time. This time, though, it's been an hour. I still have control over our body. Maybe with time, I can regain full control. I can get me back. The real Jen, with the real memories. I recoiled and shut off the message. She was going to take over my body? A faint whisper of logic kicked in. She's not real. She's a scammer, an AI recreation of my voice. A really amazingly faithful recreation, but not me nonetheless. But I couldn't believe that whisper. I felt it in my gut. The other Jen was telling the truth. I gulped and pulled up the message again, played it to the end. I don't know why they killed Dean, why they erased him from our mind. Well, your mind. I don't know who they are, but I've a vague inkling. Dean had told us about it, remember? That he was onto something that would blow things up. People will be shooketh, was what he said. Everyone in the world would be shooketh. Remember that? I thought hard. Again, it felt like I had heard those phrases before. I felt a familiar irritation at the use of the word shooketh. Was I making things up? The recording went on. Then he was killed. Then one day I was here, trapped in your mind. I watched as you went about life, not grieving Dean, acting like he never existed, and I tried to reach you, but I couldn't, not until a while back. I've been trying to do some research whenever I got hold of our body. I've been trying to find the past messages and emails from Dean. They're all gone. I tried to find out who might have done this to us. I posted about our situation on the web, under pseudonyms, with VPN. I gaped. That would explain why I had sudden VPN charges. And someone mentioned having a friend with a similar experience, that it was linked to this company, Alaxia. Thing about Alaxia is it doesn't have an address or a website. But I got in touch with this someone. They shared a location, an industrial building downtown. I'm headed to it right now. Hopefully, I retain control long enough to find something out. Wish me luck. And please, just fucking stop ignoring my messages. All of them are completely fake names. Jen, Dean, Elaxia. I'm not dumb. I'm not gonna get caught this way, now that I know they're monitoring everything. I shut my eyes and took a few deep breaths. I needed to calm down, to think logically. Could anyone have erased my memories of someone entirely? Wouldn't my friends know? Wouldn't others remember him? I was alone in this city. I've been here 9 months. I've made no good friends yet, but have friendly colleagues. I don't talk about personal stuff often with them. I don't tell my family much, beyond reassuring them that my life here is awesome. I'm settling in well. But I talked to my bestie back home about my life. I'm sure I would have talked to her about this Dean if he existed. I pulled out my phone and texted my bestie. Did I ever talk to you about a Dean? I was nearly home when she responded. No, why? Who's this Dean? No, then. There's no way I would not have told her about a supposed love of my life, so this was all bullshit, right? I went to bed early, but I couldn't sleep until 2 a.m. My mind was racing. I was also terrified of other Jen taking hold of my body. I awoke with a start. My neighbor's dog was barking like crazy. I was on the floor of the living room. My head was pounding, like someone had wrapped it in an ever-shrinking helmet. What the hell had other Jen done? I stood up and stumbled. What was that smell? Gas. All of a sudden, I was wide awake. I scrambled for the door, falling a couple of times, then crawling to it and flinging it open. I flopped out into the corridor and crawled farther down. My neighbor's door opened and I could hear him yelling at his dog, something about not refusing walks in the afternoon if he was going to holler the neighborhood awake at night for a walk. He saw me sprawled on the ground of the corridor and rushed to help me up. We ended up waiting downstairs as the police and other personnel arrived. Our immediate neighbors were evacuated, and it took a good 2 hours before we were allowed back home. Apparently, a gas leak had occurred in only my apartment, with no other damages in the building's gas lines. You'd better believe I bought the highest quality kibble for that dog the next day and gave it the world's longest scritches. But misfortune kept following me. I was nearly hit by a car. Some kindly Samaritan yanked me out of the way.
A taxi I was in had its engine catch fire. Both the driver and I barely made it out before it exploded. I was lucky the driver had incredibly quick thinking. The moment he noticed some smoke, he veered to a road shoulder and ordered me out of the car with him. It blew up seconds after. I had never seen an engine go from smoking to boom in such a short time before. I kept accumulating people I owed great debts to. Other Jen messaged often. She apologized for being naive, thinking a VPN would successfully mask our activities online. She claimed that my bestie had her memories erased too. But it was a drawing she made that sucker punched me in the gut. She had used AI to create a portrait of Dean. She said it was close as she could prompt it. Looking at that portrait, I felt something squeeze in my chest, and warm tears tingled my eyes. I looked at that face and I knew. I knew there was once a Dean, right? Other Jen told me our time was limited, that they had found out that other Jen existed, that they had run out of ethical fucks to give. Apparently, erasing my memory, wiping Dean from existence, was their way of being ethical. They weren't villains, or so they liked to think. That was Alaxia's MO. They would do whatever it takes to obtain their objective, but where possible, they liked to avoid murder. But they were happy to do it when necessary. My recent actions, or rather those of other Gens, had put a mark on me. I had to go. I just hope I hadn't painted a target on my bestie's back by even mentioning Dean. The police didn't believe a word of what I was saying, and by going to the police, I had made it known to official authorities that I knew about what these people had done. To me, to Dean, someone's in my apartment. I can hear them. They're trying to be stealthy, but I recognize that muffled slide of socks on ground. I've a nail gun ready. That was all I could get. And a baseball bat. And some beer bottles for throwing. I'm going to call the police. But once I do and speak aloud to the police, I believe they will attack. I wish I could leave other Jen a goodbye message. A floorboard creaked, right outside my door. I'm hitting post. Breathless. Final. Story 2. I work in a 24/7 diner. Last night's customers weren't human. You know how it only takes a few small accidents to make you homeless? An emergency expense here, a couple of overdraft fees there, a rent check that bounced because of the fees, and an eviction notice that happened because of the bounce. I went from stable, albeit not wealthy, to sleeping in my car within 4 weeks. And I count myself lucky. At least I have a car and a job, which is why I have this story.
I worked the overnight shift at an all-night diner. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. They never close. They're always hiring, and they don't really care about your background.
It was the quiet hours. When the time is so late, it's early. The diner was empty, so I was leaning against the counter eating a bowl of chili with shredded cheese and chopped onion while I scrolled for other jobs on my phone. The cook was outside having a smoke, and the only other person in the diner with me was a young pregnant girl named Cherie, who was texting her grandmother nervously. "I'm gonna have to leave early. My grandma is telling me I need to come get my child. I hate when she does this, but I can't afford a babysitter either." Cherie was cool, but like everyone else here, she was having a rough time. Her boyfriend was in the prison 60 miles down the road, and part of why she worked here was to fill his accounts and have enough money for regular visits. He was there for murder or something, but we don't really talk about our personal lives, so I wasn't sure. Brucius was the cook, and he took a smoke break at every available opportunity, which, when the restaurant was empty, meant a lot of opportunity. He'd wander back if a customer walked in, but there was no reason to bother him. "Hey, it's not a problem. I'll handle everything. Go pick up your kid." "Thank you. You're a lifesaver. I owe you." "Don't worry about it. I'll see you Wednesday." She ran out the door, and I didn't think anything of it. I heard her say goodbye to Brucius, and then her car engine grind as she drove away. I had another 4 hours left on my shift, and, with any luck, it would stay this quiet. Of course, since I'm here talking to you, you know I wasn't so lucky. The door dinged and a family of 4 walked in. Mom, dad, boy, and girl. My eyes flicked to the parking lot. I didn't see a car, but I just told myself they could have parked behind the building. It's funny, but I don't remember what they looked like. However, I do remember what they wore, because it was some real Leave It to Beaver, Andy Griffith type shit. The dad had on a blue plaid button-up shirt with the white undershirt beneath and khaki trousers. His hair was perfectly slicked back, like one of those old Brill Cream ads. The mom wore a red gingham check dress with the wide skirt, crinoline, and cinched waist. Her hair, too, was impeccable, straight out of an old Betty Crocker commercial. The little girl had her hair in 2 pigtails, anointed with yellow bows, and was wearing a pink shirt and blue shorts. The boy had a perfect cowlick and wore a blue shirt and red shorts. I felt unsettled. They looked perfect, but they felt wrong. Brucius came back inside, took one long look at the family as they settled into a booth, then went through the swinging doors into the back without a word. Rude. "Good evening, y'all," I said as I set down the laminated menus. "Can I get you anything to drink?" Each member of the family clasped their hands over their menu and turned in my direction with a smile. "4 glasses of milk, please," said the dad, his tone folksy, like something out of an old sitcom. "Everything looks so delicious," said the mom cheerily, without glancing at the menu. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen adults order milk, especially at such a late hour. "Thank you," the dad said when I set their glasses down. No one had moved 1 centimeter, their posture and faces in the same position as they watched me pour their beverages in return. I wiped my hands on my apron and attempted a smile. "Are you all ready to order?" The 4 of them glanced towards my name tag in unison, and I was suddenly glad most of it was hidden beneath my hoodie. "We're waiting for someone," said the mom in a sing-song voice. They all turned to face each other. Small, identical smiles on their faces, condensation from their untouched glasses making 4 tiny puddles. It wasn't right for children to be that quiet, or for anyone to be that still. To be honest, it wasn't normal to wait for someone at that hour either. I pretended to wipe down the counters. Guests weren't supposed to be left alone, and I didn't know what to do. "Are you sure I can't bring you anything?" I asked after a couple distressingly silent minutes. "We told you, we're waiting," one of the children hissed. I startled and dropped the rag. That wasn't a child's voice. All 4 sets of eyes again fixated on me, but this time, no one was smiling. My heartbeat rushed in my ears, and I could have sworn they heard it too. "Okay," I laughed nervously, my voice a little too high. Abruptly, out the corner of my eye, I saw Brucius waving frantically behind the swinging doors, gesturing for me to join him in the back. Relieved to have an excuse to leave, I backed away slowly, something deep in my most primal grain telling me not to turn my back to them. Rules be damned. I couldn't be out there alone with them a second longer. I had barely opened the swinging doors when he jerked me all the way in. "Listen," he whispered urgently, his grip tight on my arm. "Those people out there aren't real people." I looked back through the small window in the swinging door. He interrupted me. "What I don't have is time to explain. You see that bag of salt?" He jerked his head towards a giant-sized bag of pure rock salt I'd somehow never seen since working here. "Pour a line at the front. Make sure it's far enough back that the swinging door won't break the line. It needs to go all the way from one wall to the other. Pour extra if you're not sure." "I'm confused, and I'm scared shitless." "Pour." He hefted his own large bag of salt and began making a wide circle, one large enough to fit us both. Looking behind him, I could see there was already a similar salt line at the back, stretching from wall to wall. I had no idea what was happening, but I'd never seen Brucius be anything other than laid back and chill my entire time here. And that was enough to get me to listen. As I poured, I took a peek through the round window in the swinging doors and spotted the family still sitting there. They still hadn't moved. "This is really fucking creepy," I muttered under my breath. Tiptoeing to the wall, he carefully opened the circuit box. Then, taking a deep breath, he switched off the breakers, plunging the entire restaurant into darkness and turning off the lights outside. In the next instant, he'd leapt to join me in the middle of the circle. One heartbeat later, I heard the most ungodly shrieking from the dining area. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. It was like the sound waves were made of broken glass. My skin felt like it was being peeled off. My eardrums screamed. I started to fall over and stopped abruptly only partway down. Brucius had twisted the collar of my shirt around his hand. I'd almost fallen outside the circle. Another shriek rolled over me and I sobbed in confusion and pain. My muscles clenched into knots as I fought an instinctive urge to run. Brucius' grip tightened, keeping me grounded. Just then, the swinging doors blasted open and a roiling, inky mass slithered and slopped its way inside. You'd think it would be too dark to see anything, but there was so many mouths, so many teeth, so many eyes. The space filled with the scent of rot and tar. This was the family. I retched and clamped my hands over my mouth to keep the vomit down. The mass glided and spilled its way up to the very edge of the salt line and stretched horizontally along its entire length. I understood why there was a circle now. If there'd been the slightest gap in the line or between the line and the wall, it'd have slithered its way across. My eyes burned the longer I looked. I felt something warm drop onto my hand. I thought it was tears. It was a nosebleed. As the screams ratcheted higher, Bruce shouted, "Close your eyes!" I clamped my hands over my ears, screwed my eyes shut, and sobbed.
Eventually, I don't know how long, the screaming stopped. I must have passed out right after because when I came to, it was dawn. Every muscle and bone in my body ached when I stood up. My face was crusted with dried tears, snot, and blood. Brucius was red-eyed and bedraggled. He was using the special broom, the one that said "do not use" in Sharpie on the handle, to sweep all the salt into a large dustpan with the same directive. The salt had turned a smoky blue and smelled like sulfur and gasoline. Perhaps it was the daylight, perhaps it was surviving the single most terrifying night of my life, but when I spoke, my voice was surprisingly calm, even though it sounded like I'd chewed and swallowed broken glass. "I'm going to wash my face. Then I'm going to make us coffee. And then you're going to tell me what the hell that was." He nodded, mumbled, "Yeah," and kept sweeping. I was half tempted to turn the sign at the door to closed, but it would just be my luck if the manager appeared out of nowhere when I did. Besides, the place was empty. Once he was done sweeping, he washed his hands and joined me. I poured him a mug of the best coffee I've ever tasted in my life. He lit up a cigarette, and we looked at each other across an empty table. Despite the commotion, the diner was in perfect order, like nothing had ever happened. "What was that?" He took a long drag, as though toying with telling me the truth or not. But after last night, it was too late to lie. "They're called The Family. I never seen them before, but Carrie, the waitress before you and Cherie, worked here for a few years and said they show up every once in a while." He paused, as if expecting me to say something. I took a long sip, and he kept on. "The first clue was they didn't have a car. They just appeared, I don't even know from where, and walked in. The second is how they were dressed. Where did they come from? I don't know, but the lore is a family disappeared on the highway decades ago, and when they came back, they were that. And y'all didn't think to tell me this when I got hired? Would you have believed it? I guess not. There's a reason the pay is so good." "What about the salt, the lights?" "Listen, I don't know all the rules and she didn't either, but before this place was built, apparently there were a lot more disappearances. People would get off at this exit because they thought they saw a sign for food or gas, take a turn, and never be seen again. But now people just stop here, right off the highway and right back on. But that means when the family gets hungry, they come here. That's why you went straight to the back." "Yeah, I needed to get started." "And you turned off the lights so no one stops while they're here?" "Yeah." "What about the salt?" He went quiet. You saw why. At that moment, the door opened and a couple with a toddler entered. A real family, oblivious. We stopped talking. I took their order and Brucius heated up the grill. There was nothing else to do. This happened a few weeks ago, but I'm still working there. Corporate gave us an extra bonus check when the incident was reported, which got me in a cheap hotel with a decent bed and shower for a little while. I'm still applying for jobs, but no one else has called me back for an interview. I'm alive because of Brucius, but he was just hired as a corrections officer at the prison and is leaving soon. I might delete this later, but I needed to share it with someone where no one would know who I was or judge me. What do you think I should do? Story 3. I played hide and seek with a random kid. I think she followed me home. It all started 2 weeks ago. My parents dragged me to one of their friends' weddings with the ulterior motive of introducing me to some quality men. Translation, finance bros who have less empathy than a garden snail. People say only children are spoiled, but really, I think we get the raw end of the deal because there's not another kid to distract them. 100% of their attention is on me. I ended up escaping when my parents reached the 4-drink threshold, or possibly more. My mom was so plastered, she accidentally introduced me as Clara. My name is Carly, so neither one noticed when I slipped out and found a quiet room to hide out in. It was there that I met the kid. I'm not sure her name. She was about 7 with brown hair cut into blunt bangs and big blue eyes, and just walked in after I'd been in there for an hour. She wore a light blue, knee-length dress and shiny black Mary Jane shoes. The dress was a little wrinkled and dirty for wedding attire, but nice enough that I assumed she was one of the guests' kids. I was going to ignore her, but she came right up to me and just stood there, staring at me. I could tell she wanted to ask me something, but she was too shy. "You okay?" I asked, turning off my phone. She nodded. "Do you need me to find your parents or something?" She shook her head. Then she pointed vaguely towards the ballroom where the pounding bass was coming from. "Your parents dragged you here too, huh?" I asked her. She nodded. Parents. Man, it was bad enough dragging your 25-year-old daughter to a wedding. But your kid? And then just abandoning them? I could be a kidnapper, hauling her off to my white van right now, and no one would even know. Sorry, I don't want to be here either, I told her. She stared down at me with her big blue eyes. Will you play hide and seek with me? Well, please? She looked so sad. And really, was doom scrolling through engagement announcements and European vacations really more important than making some kid's day? Okay, just one round, but you have to stay close, okay? I glanced out into the country club's hallway. Not upstairs, only the hallway and these little rooms. She nodded. I pretended to close my eyes, but actually peeked to make sure she didn't get herself lost or kidnapped. 1, 2. I saw her run down the hallway and dart into the other room. 6, 7. Ready or not, here I come. After pretending to look for her in the hallway, I entered the room I'd seen her go into. It was a small game room, with a few tables scattered around and not many places to hide. I crouched to look under the tables, but it was clear she wasn't there. I turned around, and that's when I saw her, standing in the darkness behind the door, just standing there, perfectly still, staring at me with those big blue eyes, the rest of her body swallowed up in the shadows. "Found you!" I called, but she darted out into the hallway, slamming the door shut. When I tried to open it, it was locked. "You little shit!" I hissed under my breath. "I was trying to be nice to you." I panicked for about 2 seconds before realizing I still had my cell phone. My dad let me out, and I told him I was leaving. Before I left, though, I told the groom's parents that there was some little girl running around unsupervised. The mother looked perplexed, like I told her the sky was falling. Too bad, it was no longer my problem. Over the following days, I mostly forgot about the interaction, although it nibbled at the back of my mind. The groom's parents seemed kind of plastered. What if they didn't tell anyone? What if someone kidnapped that girl? I chalked it up to my anxiety talking, although I did ask my parents about it the next time I talked to them.
I don't think any kids were at the wedding, my mom said. It said on the invitation, no kids. Don't the groom's sisters have some kids, though? My dad asked. Or maybe a kid of the staff, my mom added. I've seen that more and more, people bringing their kids to work. I went to the mall and the clerk there had her kid on the iPad next to her. And that turned into a monologue about my mom's adventure buying new pants at the mall. No details spared. After the call, I realized I was exhausted. I started making the rounds in my small farmhouse, turning out all the lights, getting a glass of water. I started up the stairs, and then I saw it. Sticking out from underneath the living room curtain were two pale lines. Not lines, legs. All the breath sucked out of my lungs. No. For a second, I froze. Then I reached down and flicked the light switch. Nothing there. The long black curtains hung limply from the curtain rod. Were they moving slightly? No. It was just my imagination. Besides, even if they were moving, there was a vent right there and I had the heat on. It was just my imagination. I ran over to the window and pulled back the curtains just to make sure. But there was nothing there. Just my imagination. I'd only moved into the house a few months ago. It was my first time living alone. My boyfriend was supposed to move in with me, but we'd broken up suddenly. It was common for me to jump at random noises, to hear the house settling and think someone broke in, to hear the wind howling and think someone was wailing inside the house. The living room had been really dark when I thought I saw the legs. Besides, I saw stuff out of the corner of my eye all the time. Sometimes it was my hair or a trick of the light. I was anxious about living alone, scared of my own shadow. That's what I told myself. But then it got worse. A few nights later, around 10, I was laying out my clothes for the morning. I opened the closet, rifling through my blouses, looking for something that didn't make me look like a 40-year-old mom because I'd forgotten to do the laundry, and my only choices were things I hadn't worn or washed in ages. Something caught my eye, and I glanced down. There were Mary Janes, pushed towards the back of the closet, glinting in the low light, attached to two skinny, pale ankles. I yelped and leaped back, slammed the closet door and backed away. What the fuck? My entire body was shaking. I saw her shoes. Clearly, I could see the little straps, the pale skin of her feet. This wasn't 20 feet away in the dark. She was right there. I stared at the closet door, trembling. Nothing happened. I slowly crept towards the door. Heart hammering, I grabbed the doorknob and pulled. Nothing. Just my shoes, heels and flats and sneakers. No little Mary Janes. I sucked in a breath and stuck my hand into the closet, feeling behind all my clothes. What if she's there? What if I feel her cold little hand? But there was nothing. The closet was empty. And when did this all start? Dr. Thatcher stared at me inquisitively. I swallowed. I'd never been to a therapist before. My parents looked down on it. You don't want to be labeled. But I was seeing things. I didn't have a choice. After a wedding I went to, a week ago, I told her. And you've had a lot of life changes recently. You and your partner broke up and you've started living alone. Yes. I don't think it's random that you're seeing a child, she said. You said you and your partner disagreed about having kids, which is what led to your breakup, right? Sort of. I actually can't have kids.
And no one let me forget it either. It was only a month ago when I accidentally came across an ultrasound from when my mom was pregnant with me. She ripped it out of my hands like I was made of glass. Like seeing anything related to pregnancy or babies or children would destroy me. It wasn't a big deal. I could say it casually. I actually can't have kids. I was fine. Ah, realization crossed her face. I didn't like it. So you're seeing a child around your home after your partner left you because he wanted children and you couldn't have them. I crossed my arms. Yeah, but... And this all happened right after a wedding where your parents were trying to introduce you to someone new to help you move on. Well, I think you're stressed out, she said, leaning back in her chair. I think you've undergone a lot of life changes recently. It's a lot. Take some time to slow down. Maybe take a few days off work. Do you have any friends in the area? No, I admitted. I've only been here a few months. There's a great gardening club at the library. A lot of young women your age. You like gardening? No. Needlepoint? Mahjong? Chess? I shook my head. Well, I don't know what to tell you. She let out a chuckle. Sorry. Listen, I'll prescribe you something for the anxiety. And call me if things start getting worse. But I think you're going to be just fine. I didn't feel fine. I drove back home, pulled into the driveway. In the bright light of day, the house looked awful. The white paint was peeling in places. The windows were dirty. Even the cute little pumpkin tower on the stoop couldn't save it. I called my parents. Can I stay with you for a few days? As soon as I got to my parents' house, I felt a lot better. Instead of the cold, lonely darkness of the little farmhouse, there was shag rugs and too many lamps and the lingering scent of sugar cookies in the kitchen. Suddenly, I agreed with the therapist. Everything would be fine. I'd been freaking out about nothing. I talked to my parents, which was a whole different can of worms in terms of stress, but at least it wasn't seeing a child skulking around in the darkness. I called in sick to work for a few days. When my parents went to bed, I felt perfectly safe watching a movie alone downstairs. Felt perfectly safe opening the cabinet for a plate. Oh God, oh God! She was in the cabinet, crumpled in on herself, twisted and contorted to fit, head down, brown hair hanging over her face. I slammed the door shut and screamed. What's wrong? My mom shouted, racing down the stairs like a wild animal. She's in the cabinet, I screamed, hiding my face. She's in the fucking cabinet. What the hell is going on down here? My dad demanded. She says someone's in the cabinet, my mom said, but I could hear it in her voice. The knowing, the disbelief. Translation, she's gone fucking bonkers. Okay, my dad said, inching towards the cabinet. Which one? That one, I said, voice trembling, with the dishes. He reached out and grabbed the handle, gave it a tug. Nothing's there. I opened my eyes. The only thing in the cabinet were plates and mugs and an old bottle opener. She wasn't there. I saw her, I said softly. Saw who? My dad asked. I almost said never mind, but then I figured I looked crazy anyway. What the hell? A girl. A little girl with brown hair and blue eyes and a blue dress. I saw her at the wedding. My parents exchanged a look. I saw her in there, I swear. It's late. Let's go to bed, my dad said, slinging an arm around me and guiding me up the stairs. My mom followed after, silently, disturbed. I probably would be disturbed too if my adult child was claiming to see random ghost kids in the cabinet. I didn't blame her. But I saw her. I knew what happened. They got me settled in bed and sat with me like I was 8 years old again. You need anything else? My mom asked, squeezing my hand. I guess not, I said. Go to sleep. Everything will be fine in the morning. I kept the nightlight on, the little pig one I had since I was a kid. I stared at the 2 white teddy bears on the dresser. My mom had gotten them when she was pregnant with me. One was pristine, brand new. The other was worn and balding because I slept with it every night. I got up and grabbed it, wrapping my arms around its saggy body. It didn't really make me feel better. I heard the low, concerned tones of my parents in the next room. It sounded like they were arguing. Probably arguing about whether they should take me to the doctor at that very second. I could picture it, my mom saying, "But then she'll be labeled." And my dad saying, "Who the fuck cares, Angie? That's the least of our concerns right now." Eventually, somehow, I fell asleep. Because when I woke up, the nightlight in my room was out. It took me a few seconds to get situated. Then I remembered where I was, in my old childhood bedroom. The glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, the pink bedspread. And I became aware of a presence, a shadow, sitting on the end of my bed. She was turned away from me. Her little form was hunched over, her dark hair hanging over her shoulders. I jolted upright, my heart pounding. "You broke the rules," she whispered from the end of my bed. I opened my mouth to reply. My throat was parched. "I was only trying to keep you safe," I croaked. "I was worried." "You broke the rules," she hissed. Then she whipped around to look at me. Her blue eyes almost glowed in the darkness. But there was something horribly off about her face now. Her expression looked like pure, twisted evil burning into me. In seconds, she was crawling across the bed towards me, moving unnaturally fast. I screamed as she grinned down at me, her eyes burning blue. "It's my turn," she said, her voice lower than before. "It's my—" The door burst open. The light flicked on. I was alone in the bedroom. No little girl. My mom stood in the doorway, breathing heavily. I looked down to see a horrible, burned mark on my upper arm. It hurt like I'd been pressed with a branding iron. "You saw her again, didn't you?" my mom asked. "Yeah," I said, nodding, pulling myself up. My mom slowly came over to the bed. She sat down. When I finally looked at her, I realized she was white as a sheet. "Carly, I need to talk to you," she said slowly. "What?" She heaved out a sigh. "This is a lot, so just bear with me, okay?" "Mom, when I was pregnant with you," she stared at the ground, avoiding eye contact. "I was pregnant with twins." I froze. "But the other twin, Clara, she didn't make it. You reabsorbed her, or whatever the doctors call it." She finally looked up at me. "When you were born, I was mad at you. I was so angry that it was just you and not her." Her voice started to shake. "Mom, what?" In the middle of the night, when I was still in and out of it from all the drugs and the birth and everything, I had this weird dream. I saw this dark figure and I saw it holding hands with the girl you described. Her voice broke. She was crying. The figure said, "Both can live. 25 years for the first, 25 years for the second." And I said yes. She hid her face, sobbing. I stared at her, everything hitting me all at once. 25. You broke the rules. It's my turn. The wound on my arm throbbed like fire. Story 4. Selling your soul to the devil is not as straightforward as you think. I never believed in the devil until I met him at a coffee shop on a random Tuesday. It wasn't some dramatic crossroads encounter or a midnight summoning with candles and incantations. He was just sitting there at a corner table and grind coffee, wearing a perfectly ordinary navy suit that looked like it was about to burst because of his muscles, and reading the Financial Times. The only thing that gave him away was how he knew my name when I'd never seen him before in my life. "Marcus Chin?" he said, looking up from his paper as I walked past his table. "Rough couple of months, haven't they been?" he grinned.
I stopped dead. "Do I know you?" I asked, though something in my gut already knew the answer would complicate everything. He smiled, and his teeth were perfectly white. Too white. "Please, sit. I have a proposition that might interest you." He charmingly gestured in front of him. I should have walked away. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to keep moving, get my overpriced latte, and pretend this conversation never happened. Instead, I sat down, as if I didn't even have a say in it. "I'm in the business of solving problems," he said, folding his newspaper with precise creases. "And you, Marcus, have quite a few problems."
He was not wrong at all. The foreclosure notice was burning a hole in my jacket pocket, and my credit cards had all been maxed out for weeks. Sarah had left me 3 months ago, taking my daughter Emma with her. My startup had collapsed spectacularly, leaving me with nothing but debt and a profound sense of failure. "Who are you?" I asked. "Names have power," he said. "Let's just say I'm someone who can help. Your house, you're about to lose it. Your daughter barely speaks to you. Your ex-wife thinks you're a failure. Your credit is destroyed. Your business partners won't return your calls." He leaned back in his chair. Am I getting warm? The accuracy of his assessment hit me like a physical blow. "How do you—" I trailed. He chuckled. "Know all this? I make it my business to know. The question is, how badly do you want to fix it?" I stared at him. He was probably in his 40s with salt and pepper hair, kind eyes, and arms at the size of my head. He looked like someone's accountant, not whatever he was. "What are you suggesting?" "A transaction. A very reasonable one, actually. You have something I want, and I have something you need." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a leather portfolio. "I'm prepared to offer you $1 million. Cash, untraceable. Enough to save your house, win back your family, start over," he said. I couldn't resist the urge to sigh at his annoying corporate tone. "In exchange for what?" His smile widened. "Just a small piece of your soul. Nothing dramatic. Maybe 10%. You'll hardly notice it's gone." I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. "You're insane." "Am I?" He opened the portfolio and showed me photographs. Pictures of my house, my daughter's school, Sarah's apartment. "Marcus, in 3 days, the bank will repossess your home. In 2 weeks, your daughter will start at a new school because Sarah can't afford the private one anymore. In a month, you'll be sleeping in your car." He closed the portfolio. "I'm offering you a way out." "You're talking about selling my soul to the devil." He smiled softly. "I'm talking about a limited partnership arrangement. Think of it as spiritual equity financing. You retain majority ownership of your soul, 90%. I get a small stake in exchange for solving your immediate liquidity crisis." The business terminology made it sound almost reasonable. Almost. Conflicted. "This is crazy," I said, but I didn't get up. Crazy would be letting your pride destroy your family. Crazy would be sleeping in your car while your daughter thinks her father is a loser who couldn't provide for her. He leaned forward. "Marcus, I'm not asking for your firstborn or eternal damnation. 10%, that's all." Letting aside the fact that I was talking to the devil right now, I thought about Emma. About the look in her eyes the last time I'd seen her, when I couldn't afford to take her to the movies. About Sarah's voice when she'd called me pathetic. What exactly would happen to that 10%? Nothing dramatic. You might find yourself slightly more pragmatic in your business dealings, a little less concerned with certain moral complexities, if you know what I mean. He chuckled. "Small changes, barely noticeable." I sat there for what felt like
hours, though it was probably only minutes. Finally, I asked, how would this work? He reached into his portfolio again and pulled out a contract. It looked like any other legal document. Dense text, whereas clauses, signature lines. At the bottom, it specified 10%. 10% of Party A's immortal soul in exchange for the sum of 1 million United States dollars, $1 million. Just sign here, he said, producing an elegant fountain pen seemingly out of nowhere, and initial here, acknowledging you understand the terms. My hand was shaking as I took the pen. This was insane. This was impossible, but the foreclosure notice in my pocket felt very real, and so did the image of Emma's disappointed face. I signed. The moment the pen left the paper, I felt different. Not dramatically different, but like I just had a very strong cup of coffee. More alert, more focused. The man across from me smiled, and the contract disappeared into his portfolio.
Pleasure doing business with you, Marcus. He stood up and extended his hand. When I shook it, his skin was surprisingly warm. The money will be in your account by tomorrow morning. That's it? That's it, though he paused at the door. You might find that other opportunities present themselves soon. When they do, you'll know how to reach me. He left, and I sat there staring at my coffee, wondering if I just had the most vivid hallucination of my life. The money was there the next morning, $1 million, just like he'd promised. Within 6 months, everything had changed. I'd saved the house, started a new company, and Sarah was actually taking my calls again. Emma was back in her good school, and I could afford the things that made her smile. The 10% I'd given up seemed like the bargain of the century. The changes were subtle, just like he'd said. I found myself cutting corners in ways that would have bothered me before. When a competitor's company was struggling, I bought them out for a fraction of their worth, knowing they were desperate. When a regulatory issue threatened my new business, I made certain donations to certain local politicians that cleared the way. Nothing illegal exactly, but nothing I would have done before either. I told myself it was just good business, pragmatism. The world was harsh, and these were the kinds of decisions successful people made.
The second meeting happened at a restaurant downtown. I was celebrating landing a major contract when he slid into the booth across from me, looking exactly the same as he had 8 months earlier. "Congratulations on the Henderson deal," he said. "Quite a coup." "Thanks." I tried to sound casual, but seeing him again made my stomach clench. "What brings you here?" "A complication, I'm afraid. You see, that Henderson contract, your main competitor was about to land it. Had the inside track, actually. Better bid, better relationship with the client." I frowned. "But I won it fair and square." "You won it because certain information found its way to certain people, and certain pressure was applied in certain quarters. Information and pressure that, shall we say, originated from my resources." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that my 10% stake in your soul has been working quite hard on your behalf, harder than we originally contracted for." He smiled that too white smile. "I'm going to need to renegotiate our arrangement." "No." The word came out more forcefully than I'd intended. "We had a deal." "We did, and that deal has been exceeded. You see, Marcus, your success over the past few months hasn't been entirely your own doing. My investment has been quite active." He pulled out another contract. "I'm afraid I'm going to need another 15%. 15%? That would put you at 25% total." "Still a minority stake," he pointed out reasonably.
And frankly, quite fair given the value I've added to your life. He grinned. Then he leaned back. Of course, if you'd prefer, I could simply withdraw my support. See how well you do without it. The threat was implicit but clear. Everything I'd rebuilt could disappear. What happens if I say no?
Well, the Henderson contract would fall through for starters. Seems there might be some irregularities in the bidding process that could come to light. Your financing for the new company might encounter some unexpected obstacles. Sarah might start wondering where all this sudden success came from. He leaned back. I'd hate to see you lose everything again. I stared at the contract. Another 15% seemed like a lot, but I'd still retain majority control. And losing everything now would be worse than losing it before. I had so much more to lose. I signed. This time, the change was more noticeable. I found myself making decisions that would have horrified the man I'd been 2 years ago. When a small supplier couldn't deliver on time, I destroyed their business instead of just finding someone else. When an employee threatened to quit, I made sure she was blacklisted throughout the industry. I didn't even look at the eyes of beggars on the streets. These actions felt not just reasonable, but necessary, even satisfying. I was changing. The third meeting was at my office. He didn't make an appointment. I just looked up one day and he was sitting in the chair across from my desk. "We need to talk," he said. By now, I knew the routine. Some new crisis that required his intervention, some justification for taking another piece of my soul. I was ready for him. "What's the problem this time?" "Your wife." "Sarah? What about her?"
She's been asking questions about your sudden turnaround, about some of your business practices. She's suspicious.
Suspicious of what?
She's hired a private investigator, Marcus. A very good one. He's been digging into your finances, your business dealings, your associates. Some of what he's finding is problematic.
What kind of problematic?
The kind that leads to federal investigations. The kind that leads to prison time. He leaned forward. The kind that leads to your daughter visiting you through bulletproof glass. His smile never seemed wider at that time.
You're lying.
Am I? He pulled out a manila folder and slid it across the desk. Inside were photographs, documents, bank records, all the evidence of things I'd done, deals I'd made, corners I'd cut. Individually, they might have been explicable. Together, they painted a picture of systematic corruption. "This is all circumstantial," I said. But my voice was weak. "Perhaps, but it's enough to raise questions. Enough to start an investigation that would unravel everything. Your business, your marriage, your relationship with Emma. Everything." My hands shook. I was feeling fear. Proper fear. For the first time in a long time. "What do you want?" 30% more, he said. "That would give me 55% total, a controlling interest. In exchange, all of this evidence disappears. The private investigator has an accident. Sarah's suspicions fade. Your life continues exactly as it is. 55%. That's more than half."
It is. But consider the alternative.
I looked at the photographs again, at the evidence of what I'd become, what we'd become. I corrected myself, because none of this had happened in a vacuum. Every decision had seemed reasonable at the time, necessary even. If you have controlling interest, what does that mean for me? Oh, don't worry. Nothing will change. I will let you still have your free will, but you'll naturally find yourself more aligned with my interests, more efficient in your decision-making, less burdened by concerns that might interfere with success. I thought about Emma, about Sarah, about everything
I'd built. I signed. The change this time was immediate and profound. It was like someone had adjusted the contrast on my moral vision. Things that had once seemed questionable now seemed obviously correct. Ethical considerations that had once nagged at me simply weren't there anymore. Good or bad didn't seem to cross my mind anymore. There were just success. I fired a dozen employees without cause because they were expensive. I foreclosed on 3 small businesses that owed me money, even though I knew it would destroy the families behind them. I manipulated stock prices and destroyed competitors with the systematic ruthlessness that was both alien to who I'd once been and utterly natural to who I was becoming. Sarah stopped asking questions. The private investigator's report was mysteriously lost. My business empire grew. But I was starting to understand that I wasn't driving anymore. I was just along for the ride. The 4th meeting was at Emma's school. I was watching her soccer game when he sat down next to me on the bleachers. "She's quite talented," he said, nodding toward my daughter. "Don't," I said immediately. I grew cold. "Don't even think about bringing her into this." "Relax, Marcus. I'm not here about Emma. I'm here about you." He pat my back. "What now?" "You're dying," he said with a frown that didn't quite reach his jawline. "What?" "Pancreatic cancer. Very aggressive. You probably have 6 months, maybe less." He said it as casually as he might comment on the weather. "Of course, medicine has its limitations, but I don't." I stared at him, then at Emma running across the field. "You're lying." He grabbed my waist and pulled me closer to him. "The symptoms will start next week. You'll think it's just stress at first. By the time you see a doctor, it'll be too late for conventional treatment." He turned to face me, "But not too late for unconventional treatment." "Let me guess. You want more of my soul." 35% more. That would give me 90% total. In exchange, the cancer disappears. You live a long, healthy life. You get to watch Emma graduate, get married, have children of her own. I guarantee it. 90%. I repeated. That leaves me with 10%. Still enough to maintain your essential self, your memories, your love for your family, your core personality. You'll just be more focused, more efficient, less conflicted. And if I say no, you die, slowly and painfully. Emma watches her father waste away. Sarah becomes a widow. Your business empire crumbles without your leadership. Everyone that depends on you comes crumbling down. On the field, Emma scored a goal. She looked over at me and waved, her face bright with joy. I waved back, my hand feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Why?" I asked. "Why are you doing this?" "I'm not doing anything, Marcus. I'm simply offering solutions to your life full of problems. You're the one making the choices." "But you're engineering the problems." "Am I? I didn't give you cancer, Marcus. I didn't make you eat those donuts. I'm merely offering to cure it. I didn't make your wife suspicious. Your own actions did that. I offered to fix it. Every step of the way, you've had choices. You've simply chosen the path that led you here." He was right, and that was the most horrifying part. Every decision had been mine. Every signature on every contract had been voluntary. I had sold myself piece by piece. But watching Emma celebrate with her teammates, I knew I couldn't face dying, couldn't face leaving her. I signed the contract. This time, the change was like stepping into a different person's skin. The last vestiges of my old moral framework simply vanished. I felt lighter, more focused, more certain of my purpose. The world became a clearer place, divided neatly between things that served my interests and things that didn't. I fired my brother from the company the next day because he was questioning my methods. I evicted a dozen families from properties I owned because they were behind on rent. I destroyed a charity that was interfering with one of my developments by exposing its director's personal secrets. The bonuses decreased, as with every employee's salary. None of it bothered me. It all felt perfectly reasonable. Sarah seemed happier too. She stopped asking uncomfortable questions and started enjoying the life my success had provided. Emma thrived in her expensive school, surrounded by luxury I could easily afford. I was successful, healthy, and wealthy beyond my wildest dreams. I was also barely human. I was merely a brain, piloting a meat suit.
The final meeting was inevitable. I'd been expecting it for months when he appeared in my home office on a quiet Sunday evening. Emma was upstairs doing homework. Sarah was reading in the living room. Everything was perfect. "Hello, Marcus." I didn't respond this time. Numb. "I'm here with good news. You've been such an exemplary partner that I'm prepared to offer you the deal of a lifetime." Now I looked up. "Deal?" "Total buyout. I purchase your remaining 10%, and in exchange, I guarantee that Emma and Sarah will want for nothing for the rest of their lives. Emma will get into any college she wants. Sarah will be happy and prosperous. They'll both live long, successful lives. And me? You'll be exactly who you've been becoming. Successful, powerful, effective. You just won't be you anymore." I leaned back in my chair. It was strange how calm I felt about this moment I'd been dreading. What happens to my soul when you own 100% of it? It becomes mine completely. Your body continues to function, your mind continues to work, but the essential spark that made you Marcus Chen transfers to me. You become, in effect, an extension of my will. I become you? A part of me, yes. I thought about the man I'd been 3 years ago. Desperate, failing, losing everything. That person seemed like a stranger now. Someone weak and foolish who let silly moral constraints interfere with success. But that person had also been the one who'd loved Emma with pure, uncomplicated joy, who'd loved Sarah without calculation, who'd felt genuine remorse when he hurt people. "What guarantee do I have that you'll keep your word about Emma and Sarah?" "None. But what choice do you have?" He was right, of course. He'd been right every step of the way. I could refuse, but then what? I'd still be 90% his, still bound to his will in all but the smallest matters. And Emma and Sarah would face whatever future awaited them without his protection. If I sign this, will I still remember who I was? Oh, yes. Those memories are quite valuable. They help inform decision-making, provide emotional context for manipulating others. You'll remember Marcus Chen very clearly. You just won't be him anymore. I picked up the pen. It felt familiar in my hand now, like an old tool I'd grown comfortable using. "One last question," I said. "What's your name? Your real name?" For the first time in our relationship, he looked genuinely pleased by something I'd asked. For some reason, his face looked oddly familiar now. "You can call me Marcus," he said. "That's who I'm going to be." I signed the contract. The change was instantaneous and total. I felt my sense of self, that essential, undefinable thing that had made me, drain away like water from a broken cup. What remained was crystal clear purpose, perfect focus, and complete understanding of my role in a larger design.
I am no longer Marcus Chen. I am something that wears Marcus Chen's face and speaks with Marcus Chen's voice and carries Marcus Chen's memories. I run Marcus Chen's business empire and live in Marcus Chen's house and kiss Marcus Chen's wife goodnight. Emma still calls me Daddy. Sarah still loves the man she thinks I am. They're both happy, prosperous, and protected, just as promised. And sometimes, late at night, when they're both asleep, I remember what it felt like to be the man who loved them. I remember his hopes, his fears, his genuine desire to be good. I remember his weakness, his desperation, and his fatal inability to understand that every deal with me was exactly as straightforward as it seems. The devil told me his name, after all. And now, when desperate people find themselves at coffee shops and restaurants and school bleachers having conversations with the man in a well-tailored suit who knows their problems and has solutions to offer, they're talking to whatever left of Marcus. He offers them exactly what I offered him: reasonable terms, logical arguments, and the gradual purchase of their souls in convenient installments. Just like me, he's always completely honest about the transactions. Just like me, he never lies about the consequences. And just like me, he finds that desperate people will sell their souls piece by piece, convincing themselves each time that they're making a reasonable business decision, right up until the moment there's nothing left to sell. It's exactly as straightforward as it seems. They just don't want to see it.
Story 5. My brother's girlfriend made him do something terrible. At first, I was happy for him. He was a young kid, good-looking in his own way, but always lost in his video games and internet forums. When he came home and told us at the dinner table that he had found a girlfriend, we all breathed a sigh of relief. That was until I met her. He was in his last year of high school, while I was 2 years older, already attending the local college. I met her first, before my parents, when he asked me to grab coffee near the school. The second I saw her, I knew something didn't fit. She was stunning, popular, rich, and way out of his league. I could not understand what she was doing with my brother, an awkward kid, son of a retired police officer. From the first time I saw them together, I noticed his posture: submissive, adoring, and hers confident, in control, like she knew exactly the power she held. During that whole evening, I must have heard maybe 10 words from him. She dominated the conversation, jumping from politics to fashion to art. What unsettled me most was when she bragged about her family. They owned a huge logistics company in South California, lived in a mansion with 8 bedrooms and an Olympic-sized pool. It was all show. I left that cafe with a heavy feeling.
The next day, I pulled my brother aside, determined to figure out more. He confessed that she demanded letters from him almost every day, full of exaggerated devotion. He even showed me a few, smiling with pride. Reading them made me sick. They sounded more like desperate pleas, almost self-humiliation than love letters. I told him it was normal for a first relationship to feel intense, but not healthy to be forced into that. She sounded narcissistic, manipulative. Of course, he got mad at me. From then on, he shut me out completely. I let it go, busy with my own life at college, thinking it would pass. I only got involved again when my dad begged me to come home one weekend. He said my brother was getting worse, yelling at our parents, slamming doors, picking fights over nothing. So I drove him around pretending I needed to run errands, just to talk. At first, he stayed silent, but then he broke down crying. He told me her parents hated him. They were arrogant, wouldn't even let her introduce him to them. Worse, she showed him bruises on her arms and legs, claiming her father, an alcoholic, beat her to keep her away from boys like him. He was terrified she would eventually give in to her father's pressure and break up. It was painful to watch him sob, saying he could not live without her. I tried to calm him down, told him that young love burns out fast, that soon they would both move on. But he wouldn't hear me. He went silent again, and I thought it would fade with time, like it had with me once. The following weekend, I went home again and didn't find him there. My parents said he had gone to the movies with his girlfriend, but I had a bad feeling immediately. I went into his room and found stacks of letters he hadn't sent yet. They still had that same tone of obsession, but now mixed with anger and hatred toward her parents. One of them froze me. I will find the courage to save you. My love is capable of anything. My stomach dropped, and instinctively I went straight to the attic where my dad kept his old service handgun from when he was on the police force. The cabinet was empty. I panicked but didn't want to alarm my parents, so I told them I was meeting a friend and drove toward the neighborhood where I knew she lived. It was a wealthy area with wide lawns and big houses. It didn't take long to spot him, standing in front of one of the mansions, hood up, hands in his coat pocket. He looked shocked to see me. I told him I knew about the gun and begged him to leave with me. He looked unstable, his face switching between anger and fear. He kept saying this was the only way, that she had asked him to do it, to free her from her abusive father, that they had planned everything, the cameras off, the door unlocked, the exact time. He couldn't back down now. When I tried to hug him, he snapped, pulled the revolver out, and pointed it at me. I froze, hands in the air. That wasn't my brother anymore. He yelled something about it being time and stormed toward the house with the gun still aimed. After maybe 5 minutes of shock, I followed him inside, heart racing. Maybe I could still prevent him from doing something. But I found him standing in the living room, completely frozen, the gun hanging from his hand. I touched his shoulder, and then I saw why. Blood everywhere. Pieces of bodies scattered across the furniture, and in the middle of the room, 2 mutilated corpses. I knew instantly they were her parents. Someone else had already done the job, brutally. My brother threw up right there, and I grabbed him and dragged him outside. As we stepped out, I noticed a red light on a camera above the door. It wasn't off. I shoved him catatonic into the car. That was yesterday, and we didn't sleep at all. This morning, I checked the news and turned on the radio, but nothing yet. The bodies haven't been discovered. My brother has been calling the girlfriend nonstop, but she won't answer. No text, no calls back. We are both locked in my room now, shaken to the core. I'm writing this so the truth is at least recorded somewhere. Because when they find the bodies, when they see the footage, when they read the letters and the messages, I know what it will look like. So this story is my only hope. And I've been praying for the last few hours, and I don't usually pray, that the truth will prevail.
My brother didn't kill no one.